3 men vanished from one of the country's most secure prisons without a trace. No broken bars, no tunnels, no guards overpowered, just gone. For 6 months, they meticulously planned their escape from a maximum security facility in Orange County, California. The mastermind behind this audacious plan was an Iranian-American with a dark reputation, a cunning manipulator capable of twisting anyone's mind. But what no one saw coming was how dangerously close he would come to freedom, leaving behind only a few scraps of evidence, and the question, how did they do it? The escape was a nearly unthinkable feat, one that hinged on bed sheets, hacksaws, and a single contraband cell phone to orchestrate the impossible. Yet, even the best-laid plans can come undone by greed, betrayal, and split-second choices that turn calculated moves into life-or-death risks. This is a tale packed with shocking turns and gripping suspense. You won't believe how this story unfolds. It's 2016, and we're in the Orange County Men's Jail, a 5-story fortress meant to keep society's most dangerous criminals under lock and key. In this maze of steel and concrete, over 60 inmates share cramped spaces, constantly watched by guards. Privacy doesn't exist here, and freedom seems like a distant dream. But for Hossein Nayeri, a man with nothing to lose, this prison wasn't just another holding cell. It was his ticket to one last shot at freedom. Nayeri's story began long before his days at Orange County Jail. Born to Persian immigrants and raised in Fresno, California, he was a charismatic but rebellious child, constantly pushing boundaries and living on the edge. After a short-lived stint in the Marines that ended with a discharge, his life took a dark turn. By 2012, he'd become infamous for his brutal crimes. He was accused of kidnapping a marijuana dispensary owner, dragging him into the Mojave Desert, and torturing him in unimaginable ways. Law enforcement viewed Nayeri as a nightmare, a man who would stop at nothing to avoid prison. He proved that by fleeing the country. When authorities closed in, Nayeri slipped away to Iran, a place beyond the reach of U.S. law enforcement. For 2 years, he managed to evade capture, living in hiding and staying under the radar. But the FBI played its trump card, his ex-wife. She lured him back to the U.S., where he was finally caught, charged, and sent to Orange County Jail. But Nayeri didn't plan to wait around for a trial. For him, prison was simply a starting point, not an end. Placed in a section of the jail designed to hold the most dangerous offenders, Nayeri knew he needed help to pull off the escape of a lifetime. He found his partners in crime in 2 fellow inmates. Bak Duong, a seasoned gang member with an underground network of contacts, and Jonathan Tu, a young man entangled in a Vietnamese gang. Together they began crafting an escape plan that would exploit every weakness in the jail's security. Nayeri's first discovery came when he noticed a ventilation grate behind one of the bunks. To most inmates, it was just part of the wall, a fixture of confinement. But to Nayeri, it was an opportunity, a potential path to freedom. Though the grate was sealed tight, he saw it as a way out. To cut through it, he needed a tool, and for that, he turned to Bak Duong. Through his gang connections, Bak arranged for a hacksaw to be smuggled into the jail. Despite the high security, Bak managed to get it past the guards and into Nayeri's hands. With the hacksaw in their possession, the 3 men got to work. Every night after lights out, they took turns sawing through the bed frame that obstructed the vent. They worked in silence, always watching for guards or other inmates who might get suspicious. It took weeks, and every sound they made risked exposure. But after painstaking effort, they finally broke through the bed frame. Now they had access to the ventilation system, a labyrinth of ducts, pipes, and shafts snaking through the jail's infrastructure. But the vent system was no easy escape route. It was a twisting maze, dark and claustrophobic. Navigating it would be nearly impossible without light, and they also needed a way to communicate during their planning stages. Once again, Nayeri turned to Bak, who, through his network, managed to get a cell phone smuggled into the jail. The phone wasn't just a light source, it was a lifeline. They could use it to navigate, to communicate, and even to film their progress as they moved through the vent system, always mindful of each critical step they took. As they crept deeper into the ventilation system, they realized the next challenge. Without a map, they were essentially wandering blind through the prison's guts. One wrong turn could lead them straight back into a locked cell, or worse, a dead end. Nayeri needed inside information, and he set his sights on one person who could unknowingly help them. Inside the jail, there was an ESL teacher, a kind woman named Nusha Farin Ravagi. She was known for her sympathetic nature, and Nayeri saw an opportunity. He befriended her, feigning politeness and neediness, asking for small favors, claiming he needed help with finding his lawyer's office. In reality, Nayeri knew exactly where his lawyer's office was. It was just across the street. But by requesting a map of the office, he hoped Nusha Farin would also provide a layout of the jail, which she unknowingly did. She had just given him the key to understanding the prison's structure, including its roof and surrounding neighborhood. Armed with a hacksaw, the phone, and now the map, they resumed their work. The prison walls, once seemingly impenetrable, started to give way. But reaching the roof wasn't the end. Their route brought them to a vent leading to the rooftop, a 12-foot climb covered by reinforced iron bars. Breaking through these bars was their most daunting task yet. Sawing through the iron would take months, and with Nayeri's trial date approaching, they were running out of time. Once again, they improvised. Nayeri and his accomplices noticed the bedsheets in their cells, which guards rarely counted meticulously. Slowly, they gathered enough sheets to create makeshift ropes. With these, they scaled the walls in the vent system, inching closer to freedom each night. For 6 months, they navigated the prison's air ducts, creeping toward the roof, one silent inch at a time. Finally, they broke through, emerging onto the rooftop. But their relief was short-lived. The prison's security cameras covered the area with multiple angles, capturing every corner of the recreation yard. One careless second could ruin everything. Fortunately, they found a blind spot where the cameras couldn't catch them. They were safe for now. The final hurdle was terrifying. A 60-foot drop separated them from the ground below. A fall from that height would be fatal. Once again, Nayeri turned to Back's network for help. Back managed to arrange for a stronger rope to be smuggled in. The rope was their last lifeline. If it failed, so would their plan. On the night of the escape, the men waited for the head count to finish. Once darkness fell, they slipped into the vents, retracing their steps through the prison's guts, hearts pounding. As they emerged on the roof, they knew every second was a risk. One by one, they rappelled down the side of the building, clinging to the rope. Jonathan Tew went first, followed by Back. Both made it safely. Nayeri, the mastermind, was last. As he began his descent, 2 guards stepped outside for a smoke break, mere feet away. Nayeri clung to the rope, praying they wouldn't look up. One glance would ruin everything. Miraculously, the guards finished their smoke, unaware of the escape unfolding above them. Finally, Nayeri reached the ground, reuniting with his partners in crime. They had escaped, evading high security, layers of concrete and iron bars. But the story doesn't end here. The freedom they fought for would soon take unexpected turns. After touching the ground, the 3 fugitives melted into the shadows of the Orange County streets, adrenaline still pumping from their daring descent. They needed to disappear quickly before the prison officials realized they were missing. Stealing a van from a nearby mechanic's garage, they sped off into the dark streets, taking turns driving and keeping their eyes peeled for any sign of pursuit. They made their way into a nearby neighborhood, parking the van in a quiet alley and swapping it for a stolen sedan. The men laid low in Los Angeles, staying in cheap motels and using cash to avoid being tracked. But as the hours ticked by, news of their escape broke and their faces flooded the media. Police helicopters buzzed overhead and news stations broadcasted their mugshots, warning the public to remain vigilant. The intensity of the manhunt was unlike anything the county had seen in years. A special task force was created, involving local law enforcement and the FBI, determined to track down the fugitives before they could vanish for good. For Nayeri, Thieu, and Duong, every day on the run was a calculated risk. Moving during the day was out of the question, so they waited until nightfall to venture out for supplies. They split up into different safe houses around the city, hoping it would make it harder for the authorities to catch them all at once. But as time wore on, paranoia started to creep in. Trust was in short supply. Tensions between the men rose, with each suspecting the others of making careless mistakes that could expose their locations. One night, as they regrouped in a motel room on the outskirts of the city, their discussions turned heated. Bak Duong, frustrated and exhausted from life on the run, voiced his doubts. He questioned whether they could evade law enforcement much longer and hinted at going his own way. Jonathan, too, the youngest of the group, remained quiet, torn between loyalty and fear. But Nayeri was adamant. They'd gone too far to turn back now. He insisted they push forward, laying out a plan to escape further south, possibly even across the border. Despite Nayeri's confidence, the reality of their situation continued to deteriorate. The pressure of evading the police began to wear on them, especially for Duong, who found himself wrestling with guilt and fear. On the fourth day, he made a risky decision that would ultimately unravel the entire plan. Duong contacted an old friend and confided in him, desperate for reassurance and a way out. Unbeknownst to him, his friend had been following the news and feared being implicated. Not wanting any trouble, the friend alerted the police, offering information on Duong's location. The tip was all the authorities needed. SWAT teams mobilized, staking out the motel where Duong had been hiding. Before dawn, they swarmed the building, arresting him without a struggle. Under intense questioning, Duong broke down, sharing details of the escape and providing clues about where Nayeri and Thieu might be hiding. With Duong's information, the manhunt intensified, and officers closed in on the other two fugitives. For Nayeri, the betrayal was the ultimate blow. He realized they were out of time. Driven to desperation, he and Thieu moved to a different location, only to find their funds dwindling and nowhere else to go. Soon after, authorities tracked them to San Francisco, cornering them in a rundown apartment building. When police stormed the room, Nayeri attempted one last stand, but the odds were stacked against him. Within minutes, both he and Thieu were apprehended and taken into custody. The daring escape that had once captured the public's fascination came to an unceremonious end. The three men who had risked everything were back behind bars, facing additional charges for their bold but ultimately doomed flight from justice.